The warship Orion's blade drifted through the black sea of space, its hull glowing faintly under the twin suns of Threxia Prime. The ship had seen better days. Scars from plasma fire stretched across its sides, and smoke still leaked from its engines. Inside, Commander Ethan Vale sat in the command chair, his hands gripping the armrests as alarms blared around him. "Shields down! We've lost engine control," shouted Ensign Harper from the engineering console. Ethan didn't panic. He had faced worse during the human expansion wars. But this was different. This was Threxian territory, an empire that considered humans intruders, pests from a backwater world. "Send the distress code," he ordered calmly. "Maybe they'll take us prisoner instead of vaporizing us." The bridge lights flickered. The ship lurched as a massive shadow passed overhead. Through the cracked view window, Ethan saw it, a Threxian dreadnought easily 10 times the size of his ship. Its surface shimmered with violet energy, and alien runes pulsed like veins across its hull. A voice came through the comms, cold and sharp as metal. "Human vessel, you have violated Threxian space. Power down all systems. Any resistance will result in destruction." Harper looked at him, pale and terrified. "What do we do, Commander?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "We comply. I'd rather talk than get turned into stardust." The Orion's blade shut down. Magnetic tethers shot out from the Threxian ship, locking them in place. Moments later, gravity shifted as they were pulled into the alien docking bay. The air on the Threxian ship felt thick and heavy. It smelled faintly of ozone and metal. Ethan and his crew were surrounded by guards, tall, armored figures with blue skin and glowing silver eyes. Each carried a staff-like weapon that hummed with dangerous energy. They were disarmed, scanned, and lined up like criminals. One guard barked orders in their native tongue, but Ethan didn't understand a word. Finally, a translator drone floated near him and spoke in broken English. "You, Commander Vale, by order of Her Majesty Queen Loren of Threxia, you will be taken to the royal court. You will answer for trespassing in sacred space, Queen," Ethan muttered. "Just my luck." The guards pushed him forward. His boots clanged against the metallic floor as they marched through endless corridors lit with glowing vines of purple light. Alien murals lined the walls, scenes of battles, coronations, and cosmic storms. The Threxians were clearly proud of their history. Finally, they reached a grand chamber. The doors opened silently, revealing a hall so vast it made him stop breathing for a second. The throne hall of Threxia was carved from living crystal. Light refracted in every direction, painting the room in shifting colors. At the far end, on a raised dais, sat the queen. Queen Loren was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Her skin glowed faintly silver, her hair long and braided like threads of light. A crown of hovering shards floated above her head, each piece turning slowly in perfect harmony. Her eyes, sharp, golden, and ancient, studied him with an expression that was half curiosity, half disdain. Ethan swallowed. "Commander Ethan Vale of the Terran Federation, Your Majesty," he said, trying to sound diplomatic. "Our ship suffered an engine failure near your border." "We meant no—" Silence, her voice echoed through the hall. It wasn't shouted, yet it carried power that froze the blood. The guards tensed. Even the translator drone backed away. She stood from her throne and descended the steps slowly. Her gown shimmered like liquid metal, and every Threxian in the chamber bowed deeply as she passed. Ethan stayed standing. He figured bowing would make him look weak. The queen stopped before him. Up close, she was nearly his height, her gaze unwavering. "You trespass on my empire's heart," she said. "Humans have been warned to stay away from Threxian space. Yet here you are." "Our engines failed," Ethan repeated. "If you help us repair—" Your kind always has excuses." Her golden eyes narrowed. "You come, you take, you build, you pollute. You think the stars belong to you." Ethan felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "Maybe, but not me. I'm just trying to keep my crew alive." The queen tilted her head slightly as if curious. "You speak boldly for a prisoner." "Where I'm from," Ethan said, "we believe in talking before shooting." That made her pause. A faint smile, barely visible, touched her lips before fading again. "Interesting," she murmured. "Perhaps you're not like the others." The silence stretched. The guards waited for her command. Ethan stood tall, his uniform torn, face smeared with grease, but his eyes steady. For a brief moment, something passed between them. Respect, perhaps curiosity, or something even more dangerous. Then the queen turned away. "Commander Vale," she said, her voice formal again. By Threxian law, trespassing into royal space is punishable by death. The translator repeated the sentence and Ethan's jaw tightened. I see. Guess this talk didn't go as well as I hoped. But before he could finish, she raised her hand. However, there is another way, the court murmured. Even the guards looked at each other in confusion. She turned to face her counsel, then looked back at Ethan. The Empire faces instability, she declared. Our noble houses plot against me, hungry for power. They question my strength. They question my will. Ethan didn't know what this had to do with him, but he didn't interrupt. To end this conflict, she continued, I must make a choice that will shock the galaxy. I will bind Threxia to a symbol of unpredictability, a living contradiction. Her gaze locked onto him again. You? Me? Ethan blinked. Wait, what? She raised her chin proudly. You will become my consort. My husband, a union between Threxia and humanity. Ethan stared, completely speechless. The hall erupted into chaos, shouts in alien tongues, gasps, angry murmurs. Even the translator drone stuttered before repeating, By decree of Her Majesty Lyren, the human is to be wed to the Queen. Ethan raised a hand, as if to stop a train. Hold on, Your Majesty, I think there's been some kind of... The Queen's voice sliced through the uproar like a blade. If you refuse, she said, you will be executed at sunset. The chamber went silent. Ethan's mouth went dry. He looked around, every guard's weapon hummed, aimed at him. There was no humor in their faces, no mercy. Only the cold obedience of soldiers awaiting the command to kill. The Queen stepped closer, her golden eyes gleaming. So human, she said softly, what will it be? Marriage or death? Ethan felt his heart pound like a hammer in his chest. He had faced enemy fire, near-star explosions and vacuum breaches, but this was beyond him. Marry an alien queen? It sounded like something from an old space opera. His crew was gone, taken somewhere else in the palace. He was alone, surrounded by aliens who wanted him dead. He had no weapons, no plan, no way out, and yet he felt something stir inside him. Curiosity, challenge, a flicker of defiance. He looked straight into the Queen's eyes and said, If I say yes, what happens to my crew? They will live, she replied, under Threxian protection. And if I say no? Your death will be swift, she said simply. And theirs will follow. Ethan sighed. You don't leave much room for negotiation. She gave a faint smirk. I am a queen, not a merchant. For a long moment, no one spoke. The entire hall waited. Ethan closed his eyes, took a slow breath, and thought about his options. There weren't any. Not real ones, anyway. He opened his eyes again. All right, he said quietly. I accept, the crowd gasped. The Queen's expression didn't change, but her eyes glimmered just for a second with something like triumph. Good, she said. Then prepare him. The ceremony will be held at dawn. As the guards moved in to take him away, Ethan gave a small, crooked smile. Well, he muttered under his breath, at least I won't die bored. The guards escorted him to a high tower within the royal citadel. Through the window, he could see the twin suns sinking below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and violet. Strange flying creatures circled the spires, and beyond them, the alien city glowed like a field of stars. He sat on the bed provided, if you could call it that, and ran a hand through his hair. Everything felt unreal. Hours ago, he was commanding a human ship. Now he was about to marry a queen of a hostile empire. He laughed softly. Wed me or be executed, he repeated to himself. Some honeymoon. Outside, the guard stood silent. Inside, Ethan began to think, not about escaping, but about surviving. If he played this right, he might not only save his crew, but maybe, just maybe, change how this empire saw humanity. He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. The galaxy was watching. The next morning came faster than Ethan expected. When the doors to his room opened, a dozen Threxian attendants entered, their faces calm and unreadable. Their skin shimmered faintly like metal dust, and they moved with smooth precision, as if every motion was part of a dance. The Queen requests your presence, one said in a soft mechanical tone through a translator collar. Ethan rubbed his eyes. You mean for the wedding? The attendant gave a short nod. Yes, human. The ceremony begins at the first sun's rise. You must be prepared. Prepared? Ethan repeated. Do I get a breakfast or just a beheading with better lighting? The attendant didn't answer, but the smallest flicker of a frown crossed her face. Ethan sighed. Guess not. They led him into a chamber filled with strange machines. Floating drones circled him, scanning his body with soft beams of blue light. His torn uniform was taken away, replaced by ceremonial armor made of black fabric laced with silver threads that shimmered when he moved. The armor fit him perfectly. Almost too perfectly. Nanoweave, one of the attendants explained. Made to fit your form, symbol of royal bond. He looked at himself in a mirror. For the first time in days, he didn't look like a prisoner. He looked dangerous. He smiled. Well, if I'm going to be forced into marriage, at least I'll look good doing it. The throne hall looked even grander than before. Hundreds of alien nobles filled the space, their robes glittering like liquid gems. The air hummed with soft music, played on crystal instruments that floated above the guests. When Ethan entered, every eye turned toward him. The murmurs began immediately. That's the human. Impossible, a lower species. The queen must have lost her mind. Ethan didn't understand their language, but he didn't have to. The tone was enough. He kept his chin up and his steps steady. At the far end, Queen Lyren stood waiting. Today she wore a gown of living light, thin streams of glowing silk that moved with her heartbeat. Her crown hovered above her head like a halo of stars. She looked at him as he approached, her expression calm, unreadable. When he reached the dais, the music stopped. The ceremony began. An elder Threxian, tall and ancient, stepped forward holding a silver sphere that floated in his palm. By decree of the twin suns, he said in a deep voice, Queen Lyren of Threxia binds her soul to the one called Ethan Vale of Earth. The crowd gasped again, whispers filling the air like the rustle of leaves. Ethan swallowed. He hadn't agreed to any soul binding, but it was too late now. Lyren extended her hand toward him. A small glowing mark, like a golden flame, appeared on her palm. The elder gestured for Ethan to do the same. He hesitated. The queen's eyes flicked toward him. If you refuse now, she said quietly, the law will see it as treason. They will kill you before I can stop them. Ethan sighed. Well, can't have that. He extended his hand. Their palms touched. Light flashed. A strange warmth spread through his body, like fire and electricity all at once. He felt something tug deep inside his chest, and for a heartbeat, he swore he could feel her thoughts, sharp, focused, filled with a sadness she never showed. Then it was gone. The elder spoke again. The union is sealed. By royal decree, the human is now consort of Threxia. The hall erupted in outrage. Some nobles shouted, others turned and stormed away. But the queen ignored them all. She turned, raised her chin and declared, Let it be known across the empire. Threxia stands united under my rule, and no border, no species, no fear shall divide us. The music returned, louder now, almost defiant. Ethan just stood there, blinking. That's it, he whispered. We're married now. Lyren glanced at him with the faintest smirk. Congratulations, husband. The celebration didn't last long. Once the public ceremony ended, guards escorted Ethan and the queen through the private corridors of the citadel. The noise of the crowd faded behind them. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. So, you want to explain why I just became the most hated man in your empire? The queen stopped walking. You're not hated, she said calmly. You're feared. There's a difference. Feels the same to me, he muttered. She turned to face him. Listen carefully, human. The Threxian Council has been plotting against me for months. Each noble house wants control of the throne. They say my reign is weak, that I no longer represent the strength of our people. And marrying me fixes that how? It shocks them, she said simply. It makes them uncertain. No one can predict what a human will do. Your species is reckless, unpredictable, and impossible to control. That's why I chose you. You are my weapon of chaos. Ethan blinked. A weapon? Don't take it personally. "Oh, I'm taking it personally," he said. "You basically forced me into marriage to make your enemies nervous." She met his gaze without flinching. "You should be honored. You've been given a role in history." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Some history. I'm a pawn with a wedding ring." They reached a private chamber overlooking the city. Through the glass walls, Ethan could see the glowing spires of Threxia stretching into the night. The twin moons hung low, their light bathing everything in soft silver. Loren walked to the window, her reflection shimmering. "The nobles think I've lost control. They expect me to act predictable, to crush you or enslave you. Instead, I made you my equal. That confusion will keep them from moving too fast." Ethan crossed his arms. "And what happens to me when they stop being confused?" She turned her head slightly. "That depends on how well you play your part." He stared at her for a long moment. "You really don't trust anyone, do you?" The queen didn't answer. Her eyes looked distant, lost in the lights of the city. "Trust," she said finally, "is a luxury a ruler cannot afford." That night, Ethan was shown to his new quarters. Not a prison, but not freedom either. The walls were carved from the same glowing crystal as the throne hall. A small desk stood near the window, beside a balcony that opened to the alien skyline. He sat there for hours, watching the flying transports move like fireflies through the sky. Somewhere out there, his crew was alive. He had been promised their safety, but promises from alien queens weren't exactly reliable. He needed a plan. If he wanted to survive this political game, he had to learn how it worked. The next few days were a blur of public appearances and formal dinners. The queen never smiled in public. Every gesture she made was precise and planned. Ethan quickly realized she wasn't just ruling an empire, she was walking a tightrope above a pit of knives. Behind the beauty of Threxia's shining towers, the empire was full of fear. Servants spoke in whispers. Guards avoided eye contact. The council members watched everything the queen did, waiting for a mistake. And now, they watched Ethan too. One evening, a tall Threxian noble approached him during a formal gathering. His skin was a darker shade of blue, his eyes glowing faintly green. He bowed slightly. "Human consort," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I am Lord Kalor of the East Spire. Congratulations on your unusual union." Ethan forced a polite smile. "Thanks. Still getting used to it myself." Kalor's voice lowered. "You must understand, your presence here changes many things. Some will not accept it. Some will try to remove you." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Remove me how?" Kalor's smile widened slightly. "Threxians have many ways of solving problems." Before Ethan could respond, Kalor turned and walked away, leaving him with a cold feeling in his stomach. Later that night, back in his quarters, Ethan found a small device hidden under his table, a listening drone, barely the size of a coin. He crushed it in his fist. "Great," he muttered. "I'm not just married. I'm being spied on by my in-laws." When the queen came to meet him that night, he didn't bother hiding his anger. "Your nobles are planting bugs in my room," he said, tossing the crushed drone onto the table. She glanced at it, unimpressed. "Of course they are. You don't seem worried." "I'm not. It means they fear you already. Or they're planning to kill me." "That too," she said calmly. Ethan blinked. "You're not exactly reassuring, Your Majesty." She looked at him then, really looked. For a moment, the cold mask slipped. "Do you think I wanted this?" she asked softly. "Do you think I enjoy using you as a pawn? My empire is tearing itself apart. I will do whatever it takes to keep it alive." Ethan hesitated. There was pain in her voice, real pain buried under pride and duty. "Maybe," he said slowly, "but you didn't have to do it alone." The queen's eyes softened for just a heartbeat. "Humans," she whispered almost to herself. "You always think everything can be solved with trust." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes it can." For the first time, she didn't argue. That night, as the city slept below, Ethan realized something important. The queen had married him to play politics. but she was surrounded by enemies, people waiting for her to fall. If he was smart, he could use this chaos. He could survive, maybe even protect her, because whether she liked it or not, they were bound now, by law, by politics, and by that strange mark still glowing faintly on his palm. The nights on Threxia Prime were never quiet. From the Royal Tower, Ethan Vale could hear the hum of engines and the faint echo of distant thunder. The twin moons cast silver light across the alien city, making the crystal spires glow like frozen fire. He stood on the balcony, still wearing the black and silver armor of his forced marriage. The mark on his palm, the bond symbol, shimmered faintly whenever he thought about the Queen. It was strange. It didn't hurt, but sometimes it felt alive, as if something inside him responded when she was near. He didn't like that feeling. He didn't like being anyone's weapon or symbol. He wanted to understand why this Queen had chosen him. There had to be more than politics. The next morning, guards came for him again. "Her Majesty requires your presence in the council chamber," the lead guard said in the usual flat tone. Ethan followed, trying to look confident even though his stomach twisted. Every corridor of the citadel seemed to whisper secrets, soft voices that stopped the moment he passed. When the tall crystal doors opened, he found Queen Liren standing before a large circular table. Around it sat a dozen alien nobles, each wearing different armor colors and crests. They looked at Ethan as if he were an infection in their perfect system. The Queen spoke first. "Commander Vale will join our strategy discussion. He has knowledge of human tactics and machinery that may prove useful." One noble hissed, "A human in royal council? Outrageous." Another slammed a fist on the table. "He is your pet, not an advisor." Ethan leaned casually against a chair. "Pet, advisor, husband, depends on who you ask," he said. "But I am here, so let's get on with it." A few nobles stared in disbelief at his tone. The Queen hid a small smile. "Proceed," she ordered. A holographic map appeared above the table. It showed the outer regions of the Threxian Empire, marked in violet light, and several red zones pulsing at the edges. "These are rebellion sectors," said a general. "Pirates and separatists striking our outposts. We suspect support from the Varan Dominion." Ethan recognized the name. The Varan were an aggressive alien race that once fought humans near the core rim. They loved war almost as much as they loved conquest. He frowned. "So the rebels aren't just local trouble? They're funded by an enemy empire?" "Yes," the Queen said, "and the council is divided on how to respond. Half wish to open full war. The rest want surrender and peace negotiations. And you?" Ethan asked. Her golden eyes met his. "I want survival, whatever it costs." The meeting went on for hours. Ethan listened more than he spoke, learning the hierarchy of Threxia. Every noble had their own private fleet, their own ambitions. They spoke politely to the Queen, but their eyes were full of greed. When the council finally ended, the Queen dismissed everyone except Ethan. The room grew silent again. "You handled yourself well," she said. "You didn't flinch when they insulted you." "I've been through worse," Ethan replied. "Half of them want your throne. The other half want me dead." She gave a short, tired laugh. "You see more clearly than most of my advisors." Ethan studied her. Beneath the pride and poise, he saw exhaustion, a ruler carrying too many secrets. "Tell me the truth," he said softly. "What's really happening here?" The Queen hesitated. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Then she touched the console, locking the room with a pulse of light. "Come with me," she said. They descended into the lower levels of the citadel, far beneath the shining halls where nobles drank and plotted. The air grew colder, darker. Guards stood at every turn, saluting as the Queen passed. Finally, they reached a massive door marked with glowing runes. It opened with a heavy sigh. Inside was a vast underground chamber filled with giant glass tanks. Each tank held strange mechanical roots pulsing with faint light. The sound of machinery echoed like a heartbeat. Ethan stared. "What is this place?" Liren stepped beside one of the tanks. "The truth," she said quietly. "The empire you see above is dying." She placed her hand on the glass. "Our suns are weakening. The core of Threxia will collapse in less than a century. Our energy harvesters are failing. We built this facility to create a new power source, one that could sustain our world." Ethan frowned. "That doesn't sound like rebellion, it sounds like desperation." "It is both," she said. The nobles fight because they know time is short. They want to rule the last years of Threxia, but I refuse to let our people fade quietly. He looked at the glowing roots again. So what's in these tanks? She hesitated. Hybrid energy. A fusion of organic life and quantum matter. A creation banned by the Galactic Accord. My scientists call it the Eclipse Core. Ethan whistled. You're building a star inside your planet. That's bold, she smiled faintly. Bold or foolish? That depends on whether it works. And if it doesn't? Then Threxia dies and I die with it. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of machines filled the silence. Ethan finally said, So that's why you married me. Not just to shock the nobles. You needed someone who could help you finish this. She turned toward him, surprised. How do you know that? Because you could have chosen anyone else, a rich alien prince, a general, a scientist. But you picked a human engineer and commander. Her expression softened. You are more perceptive than I expected. He gave a half smile. Humans are good at puzzles. Loren looked at the glowing tanks again. You're right. I need your help. Human technology uses unique energy stabilizers. Your plasma coils can contain what ours cannot. If we adapt that system, the Eclipse Core might survive ignition. Ethan folded his arms. You're asking me to help you break every interstellar law ever written? Yes, he thought for a moment. Then I guess we'd better do it right. The following days turned into long nights of work. Ethan studied alien schematics while Threxian scientists watched him with a mix of fear and fascination. He taught them how human stabilizers used oscillating plasma fields instead of static force barriers. At first, they resisted his methods. But when one of his test simulations stabilized the core for a full hour, they began to listen. Loren visited often, always silent, always observing. She rarely spoke during experiments, but Ethan could feel her presence. Sometimes when he looked up, she was watching him with an expression that wasn't cold or royal. It was something almost human. One evening, as they reviewed results, Ethan noticed she was staring at her reflection in a data screen. Her crown was off, her hair loose for once. You ever take a break? He asked. Rulers don't rest, she replied. Humans do. Keeps us sane, she smiled faintly. Maybe that's why you survive your chaos, he chuckled. Or maybe we're just too stubborn to die. There was a long pause. Then she said quietly, When I first saw you, I thought you were like all the others, arrogant, loud, selfish. But you're different, Ethan shrugged. Most humans are. You just met the wrong ones first, their eyes met. For a heartbeat, the distance between Queen and human vanished. But before either could speak, alarms blared through the chamber. Security breach, a guard shouted. Rebel infiltrators in the lower levels. They ran toward the main corridor. Explosions shook the walls. Smoke filled the air. Ethan grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, a sleek energy rifle, and took cover beside the Queen. Guess your nobles didn't like our little science project, he said. Loren activated a wrist shield, deflecting incoming plasma shots. They want the Eclipse Core destroyed before it proves my power. Not happening, Ethan said. Together they fought their way through the attackers. Ethan's human instincts, fast, unpredictable, unorthodox, caught the rebels off guard. While Threxian soldiers fired in formation, he used cover, feints, and sudden charges. Within minutes, the last invader fell. When the smoke cleared, the Queen stood beside him, breathing hard. A piece of debris had cut her arm. Silver blood glimmered on her skin. Ethan tore a strip from his sleeve and wrapped it around her wound. You'll live, he said. She stared at him. You risked your life for me. Yeah, he said with a grin. That's what husbands do. For the first time she laughed, soft and genuine. After the battle, the council demanded answers. The Queen faced them with cold fire in her eyes. The rebels tried to destroy the core, she said. But they failed. Thanks to the human, murmurs spread. Even the harshest nobles fell silent. Ethan stood beside her, arms crossed, looking every bit the defiant Terran. That day, rumors began to spread across the Empire. The human consort who fought beside the Queen, who bled for Threxia, who might save their dying world. That night, alone again in the tower, Loren looked out over the shining city. Ethan joined her quietly. You know, he said, if this project works, you'll have done something no empire has ever done. You'll give your people a second life. And what will you do then? She asked. He shrugged. Maybe I'll finally get that breakfast I asked for when you first arrested me. She smiled. You truly are impossible. Humans usually are, he said softly. Their hands brushed, and for a moment, the golden mark on their palms glowed together, two lights pulsing in rhythm. Neither pulled away. Outside, the twin moons rose higher, shining over a city that didn't yet know how much its fate had just changed. The twin suns of Threxia Prime had just begun to rise, casting violet and gold streaks across the alien city. From the balcony of the Royal Citadel, Commander Ethan Vale could see hundreds of ships emerging from the horizon. Rebel fleets, they've brought the full force, Ethan muttered, gripping the railing. Smoke rose from the distant outposts. Explosions flickered like lightning on the crystalline spires. Queen Loren stood beside him, silent and regal. Her golden eyes scanned the horizon, calculating, unblinking. Despite the chaos, she radiated control, a calm that made even Ethan pause. They won't stop until they have the city, he said. And they'll kill everything in their path. She turned to him. And yet here we stand. Why do you look so calm? Humans don't run from odds, Ethan said simply. We find a way to turn them around. Loren studied him, intrigued. Explain. I don't have a fleet 10 times your size, but I do have strategy and improvisation. Trust me. For the first time in weeks, the Queen allowed a small smile. The city's defense grid was already online. Plasma turrets, energy shields, and automated drones ready for battle. But the rebel fleet had adapted. They were moving faster, attacking in waves and targeting key energy nodes. Your defenses will hold for a short time, one general reported. But the enemy's main fleet is vast. Ethan shook his head. Not if we use their speed against them. He sprinted to the command chamber, Queen and guards following. Holographic displays lit the room with red and violet pulses. Ethan analyzed the map quickly. They're splitting into 3 waves, he said. If we focus all our turrets on the lead wave and let the others get closer, their momentum will make them crash into each other. A general scoffed. You speak of chaos. This is military precision. Ethan looked at him evenly. Military precision only works if everyone obeys. I doubt these rebels will. Loren's eyes flickered to him. I approve. The plan began immediately. Ethan moved from console to console, overriding turrets, recalibrating shields, and issuing orders that no Threxian soldier had ever heard before. Do not fire until I say, he commanded. Focus on timing, not destruction. Make them crash themselves. The Queen followed his instructions exactly as he gave them. Her trust in him absolute. Guards and soldiers hesitated at first, but when Ethan demonstrated, their fear turned into efficiency. In the sky, the first wave of rebel ships approached. Ethan held his breath. Seconds later, a single order, and all turrets fired in perfect synchronization, not to destroy but to create a force field funnel. The rebels hit it and spun into one another. Collisions erupted like controlled fireworks. Ships exploded, and the debris scattered across the violet horizon. Ethan grinned. Step 1, chaos works. The second wave advanced, but this time they were prepared. The Queen watched, her jaw tight. They have learned, she said. Good, Ethan said. That's when we become unpredictable. He activated the city's orbital cannons not to fire directly, but to generate electromagnetic pulses. Rebel ships lost synchronization, their communication disrupted. Drones and fighters collided in a spectacle of light and metal. Your tactics are unorthodox, Loren said. But effective, Ethan chuckled. You should get used to humans. We're good at surviving impossible odds. Her expression softened slightly. And you will survive this, he gave a short laugh. Not if I have to do it alone. Hours passed and the rebel fleet persisted. The city shook as plasma fire and explosions lit the sky. Ethan and the Queen moved from station to station, fighting alongside engineers and soldiers alike. At one point, a rebel boarding pod landed on a lower tower. Ethan sprinted down with a small team, encountering alien soldiers who expected traditional combat. Instead, he used their own gravity lifts against them, flipping them into walls and disabling the pod. The Queen followed, her own hands working devices, Ethan pointed out. Together they were a team, human ingenuity and alien precision. By the time the sun reached its zenith, the rebel forces had suffered heavy losses. Ships scattered, remaining waves hesitant. Step 2, survive, Ethan said, wiping sweat from his brow. The Queen looked at him, her golden eyes unreadable. Step 3, he grinned. Make them wish they never attacked. That night, the rebels returned for their final assault, a concentrated strike aimed at the central power core of the city. Ethan reviewed the plan quickly. We don't have time for defense alone. We hit their command ship directly, take them out and the rest scatter. Loren's eyes glimmered. Are you sure? Absolutely, he said. Trust me. The Queen nodded, activating her personal fleet alongside him. Together they launched a daring counterattack. Human piloting instincts combined with Threxian technology created a perfect storm of unpredictable maneuvers. Ethan boarded the lead rebel ship using a small assault pod. The Queen's fleet provided covering fire. Inside the ship, he moved like a shadow, fast, efficient, improvising at every turn. He sabotaged the navigation system, rerouted power to cause internal explosions, and turned the rebels' own weapons against them. Within minutes, the ship's reactor destabilized. Ethan leapt out just as it detonated, the explosion lighting the night sky like a supernova. The remaining rebel ships panicked, fleeing into the void. Their coordination destroyed, the city was safe. When Ethan returned to the citadel, Loren was waiting on the balcony. The city below glowed, peaceful for the first time in days. You did it, she said softly. You saved Threxia. He shook his head. No, we saved Threxia. You fought too. She regarded him for a long moment. You could have died out there. Yet you risked yourself for an empire that barely accepted you. Ethan shrugged. Humans, we take risks, especially when someone's counting on us. She smiled faintly, almost shyly. I underestimated you, Commander Vale. Perhaps I still do. He grinned. Better keep an eye on me then. I don't take it easy on anyone. The twin moons rose higher, their silver light bathing the victorious city. The battle was over, but Ethan knew the war within the council, the politics, and the empire itself was far from finished. After the battle, the nobles were forced to recognize him. The Queen held a council meeting where Ethan's decisions were explained. Some whispered in anger. Some nodded in respect. One voice stood out, Lord Kalor of the East Spire. The human has saved the throne. By what right? The right of skill, courage, and action, the Queen replied firmly. He is my consort, my equal, and the savior of Threxia. Anyone who doubts him doubts the empire itself. A murmur spread. The words echoed through the chamber. Fear replaced anger. Respect replaced doubt. Ethan smiled quietly. Humans were good at proving themselves where it mattered most. That night, Loren summoned him to the upper balcony again. The city slept below, its lights twinkling like scattered jewels. You've done more than survive, she said softly. You've changed everything. The council will think twice before challenging me or you. Ethan shrugged. All in a day's work for a human, Your Majesty. She looked at him with something unreadable in her golden eyes. Humans, you are remarkable, he chuckled. You mean annoying, unpredictable, and stubborn? She laughed softly. Perhaps, but you are also necessary. Ethan felt a flicker of pride, not just for himself but for his people. Humanity was small, young, and underestimated, but when needed, they could shape worlds. He looked at her. So what's next? The next challenge, she said, is survival beyond Threxia. You've seen the power of rebellion. The galaxy will never stop testing us. Ethan nodded. Then we'll keep proving them wrong. One impossible fight at a time. The twin moons shone over them. A human and a queen bound by politics, survival, and now by trust. The city of Threxia Prime shimmered in the early light of the twin suns. After the rebellion and the decisive battles that had shaken the empire to its core, silence now filled the streets. Smoke had cleared, ships had been repaired, and the city's energy shields glowed steadily over the crystal towers. Commander Ethan Vale stood on the balcony of the royal citadel, overlooking the city he had helped save. Beside him stood Queen Loren, her golden eyes reflecting both pride and fatigue. Today the council meets, she said softly. They must acknowledge what has happened and you will face them. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Face the nobles? After all the chaos we caused? They have no choice, she said. And neither do you. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had fought battles, sabotaged ships, and survived assassination attempts. But nothing had been as daunting as standing before the council of an entire empire. The chamber was tense when they entered. The nobles sat stiffly in their high chairs, their robes gleaming in the morning light. Every face showed anger, fear, or calculation. Queen Loren stepped forward. Her presence silenced the murmurs immediately. The rebellion has been crushed, she said. The Eclipse core is stable. The city stands intact, and the human standing beside me, Commander Ethan Vale, has been the key to this success. The council erupted into shocked whispers. Lord Kaelor, the same noble who had doubted Ethan before, rose slowly. A human? You place the fate of our empire in the hands of a foreigner? Ethan met Kaelor's gaze calmly. Yes, he said. And if you think that's a problem, maybe you should remember that the same human just saved your fleet from destruction. Gasps filled the chamber. A few nobles muttered under their breaths, clearly impressed, while others scowled at his audacity. Loren held up a hand. Enough. Commander Vale is not just a human. He is my consort. By law, he has authority to advise, act, and if necessary, defend the Empire. Those who oppose him oppose me, and the Empire itself. For the first time, the council was silent. The Queen's words were iron, absolute, and final. Ethan felt the weight of the moment. This was more than a political victory. It was proof that humans, small, underestimated, and young in the galactic order, could change the course of an empire. He spoke again, addressing the council. I'm not here to rule. I'm here to help your empire survive. You want a leader who acts with precision, courage, and a willingness to adapt. That's what humans do. And I've already shown what we can accomplish together. Some nobles nodded begrudgingly. Others still refused to meet his eyes. The Queen stepped closer to him. You have made them listen. They may not like it, but they will respect it. Ethan glanced at her, feeling a mix of pride and awe. She was still the Queen, still commanding and intimidating. But something had changed. They had fought together, bled together, and survived together. The council session ended with formal decrees. Nobles swore loyalty. Energy resources were redistributed to stabilize the empire. And rebel leaders who had survived were exiled. After the council, Loren led Ethan to the palace gardens, a rare place of tranquility in the chaos of the city. Crystal trees glowed faintly, their leaves humming with energy. Strange flowers opened only under the twin suns, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and fresh rain. You've earned the respect of my people, she said, and perhaps even my trust. Ethan smiled. I already trusted you. Took me long enough to realize that humans are lucky when we do trust someone. She chuckled softly. Humans are unusual, and that's why we survive, he replied. We adapt. We improvise, we fight when needed, and think when we have a moment. The Queen looked at him, her golden eyes studying his face as if reading a map of his thoughts. You've changed me, Ethan Vale, not just the council, not just the empire. Me. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Changed you? He asked carefully. She nodded. You see more than titles and orders. You see people, hope, possibility. I've been a ruler my whole life, surrounded by fear and obedience, but you remind me what it means to be alive. For the first time since the forced marriage, the Queen reached for his hand. The mark on their palms, the glowing symbol of their bond, pulsed softly. You've earned my heart, she whispered. Not as a consort, not as a pawn, but as an equal. Ethan felt a warmth he had never known. And you've earned mine, he said quietly. I came here a prisoner. No, I'm something else. And I want to protect that something. For you and for everyone who depends on it. The Queen smiled. The first true smile Ethan had seen. It was quiet but radiant, filled with trust and acknowledgement. They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the twin suns rise fully over Threxia Prime. The city beneath them had survived war, betrayal, and rebellion. The Empire would endure. The following days were filled with ceremonies and new appointments. Ethan worked with Threxian engineers, integrating human technology into their planetary systems. Ships were repaired, energy grids stabilized, and civilians were reassured. Everywhere he went, people whispered. The human who married the Queen, who fought alongside her, who saved the Empire, Ethan Vale, was no longer an outsider. He taught them human tactics, quick problem-solving, and how to improvise under pressure. The lessons worked. Threxia's defenses were stronger than ever. Even the Queen's most skeptical nobles began to respect him. Some of them quietly acknowledged what he had done. Others, though still wary, dared not oppose him openly. One evening, Ethan found himself alone with the Queen in the command chamber, overlooking the stars. You've done more than I imagined, she said. Not just saving my city, but showing my people what is possible. Humanity, you are remarkable. Ethan shrugged. Humans aren't perfect, but when things get impossible, we do what we must. That's all. Sometimes, she said softly, what you must do changes hearts, not just outcomes. He looked at her, understanding finally what she meant. They had both changed. Two beings from completely different worlds, bound by fate and choice, had survived impossible odds together. And what about the future? Ethan asked. Together, she replied simply. Weeks later, the Empire held a grand celebration. Citizens poured into the crystal streets, cheering for their queen and her human consort. Ethan walked beside Loren, standing taller than ever. For the first time, he felt fully part of a galaxy he had once thought hostile and impossible. The queen raised her hand to the crowd. Today we celebrate not just survival, but unity. Our empire is stronger, not because of power alone, but because we adapt, because we fight together, and because we trust in the impossible. The crowd erupted in cheers. Ethan grinned. Humans were never meant to be small. They adapted, they fought, and they inspired. He looked at the queen. I guess humans aren't the only ones who can learn from each other, he said. She smiled. And I, a queen, have learned humility and hope from you. That night, in the quiet of their private quarters, Ethan and Loren sat together, hands clasped, looking out at the city. You know, Ethan said, I never thought marriage could be like this. Loren raised an eyebrow. Neither did I. But perhaps it's not just about law or politics. Perhaps it's about choice. And trust. And heart. Ethan squeezed her hand. Then I choose this. Every day. And I, she replied, choose you. Every day. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to pause. Outside, the twin moons shone on a city that had been saved by courage, strategy, and unexpected unity. A human and an alien queen, bound by law, survival, and now genuine trust, stood together. And the stars themselves seemed to whisper approval, because humanity, when underestimated, could do the impossible.